Rock, metal, prog, and everything in between. If you're into rock, you've come to the right place. Welcome to this episode of Talkin' Rock with Meltdown. Don't forget to follow the audio-only Talkin' Rock podcast on all podcast platforms. And now, it's time for today's conversation. Here's Meltdown.
Don, how are you?
How am I? I'm here. I'm good. I'm wearing my Detroit
Look
shirt.
at that. Wow.
I know how to pander.
I should have had some sort of a New York garb on or something. Now if I feel lost, I feel like I've let you down.
Oh, you let me down plenty over the years, but yet I still come back on. You know what's funny about doing this with you is, and in full disclosure to people watching or listening, we're friends outside of the business, but I appreciate all the mentions that I've even gotten in other interviews that you've done. So much so that people will say, "Hey, I heard you on with Meltdown and Jeff Scott Soto," and I go, "No, it was just a mention." So even the mentions, your immense power comes through like that.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, I think that we're talking about the Monsters of Rock, and I was so excited. I just happened to be driving through Miami, and I saw the cruise ships. I'm like, my friends are on those cruise ships right there, at least one of them. And I'm thinking about going next year because I don't want to scare you, but next year's Monsters of Rock is on my birthday.
Well, that is very scary. So we're going to have to, you will celebrate the right way if you come on the Monsters of Rock cruise, because it's the best time you can have. It's the best party of the year at sea. It's the USS STD, the floating mullet of the sea. It's the greatest.
Now, of course, it's funny. We've been in this business a long time, and do you find it? I don't know. I think it's really cool that some of these bands I grew up listening to are now my friends, and I can text them or talk to them, or I get to interview or interact with them. Talk about that in your life. I mean, there's some bands in my life that I thought I'll never meet these guys. The next thing you know, I'm interviewing them or doing whatever.
I always think about being 16 years old, going to the Meadowlands here in New Jersey, where I live, to see Judas Priest on the Defenders of the Faith tour. I went by myself. I was standing dead center in the 10th row, probably paid $12 maybe for the ticket, right, back then. And I just remember looking up at Rob Halford, and really that he was the metal god. Before he even had the nickname, I was in such awe of all of them as I stood there, and I'll never forget that feeling that I had. And yes, and then to think like I wouldn't know how to get backstage. I would never know how to meet any of these people in any way. And you're right, for them to have become friends over the years is really amazing, but I never lose the fandom. I never lose that feeling of being in awe of their talent.
Yeah, it's like, especially like with you, with somebody like Biff from Saxon. The Motorhead guys. And I mean, let's just talk about your record, No Sleep Till McSorley. They even let you use their cover, or how does that work? Yeah.
So yeah, the classic live Motorhead album, No Sleep Till Hammersmith.
Right.
And that is the actual artwork with me photoshopped in there with Lemmy and Fast Eddie and Filthy. And I just changed it to No Sleep Till McSorley's because that's a good old drinking pub in New York City that I've been going to for years and years. And I thought, I'm trying to kind of solve the world's problems on this album. And that's the kind of place McSorley's is, where you go in with your buddies and you drink McSorley's light or dark ale. It's all they serve in there. It's the oldest pub in New York, 1854. And you sit at a table, and they put people from all over the world at your table, and you hang and you talk. I mean, God forbid, you go to a bar now, everyone's like looking at their phone, they're staring down. So I said, this is the perfect place. So once I knew McSorley's, I knew it was going to be a Motorhead tribute, No Sleep Till McSorley's. And then, like you said, man, it's amazing that I could email Motorhead's manager and say, hey, could I use the Motorhead font? Hey, could I use the Motorhead artwork? And for him to get back to me within a half hour and say, yes, no problem. I'm, happy to give both to you, to be able to text Phil Campbell, their guitar player, to do the guitar intro on here and have him say yes. Beyond my dreams, man. So I'm so happy with the way it turned out. And as I always say, for the people who get the packaging and the artwork, it's a bonus, but what's on the inside of the album is for everybody.
Yeah, there you go. And I was listening to some of it before, and now correct me if I'm wrong. The intro with Lemmy, when was that recorded?
So the Lemmy intro, and I'm glad it fooled you. It's obviously not really Lemmy,
Okay, yeah.
but there's a Motorhead tribute band here in Jersey called Head Motor.
Oh,
And as you can attest, that guy does Lemmy so damn good. And obviously, in his absence, I thought, oh, let me ask Sean, aka Lemmy, the singer from Head Motor, to do the intro. And he laid a bunch down for me, and you know, put in Phil's guitar solo under that, and then the crowd swells up, and away I go. So I love just the first before I even talk. That's where the album goes downhill when I start talking.
yeah. It starts up here and then yeah, it's slowly. No, the record's great. I've listened to a lot of it. As a matter of fact, I didn't get to listen to all of it, but I now I get the ale on the vinyl. You got the dark and the light ale.
Yeah, the pre-orders out there now, and maybe you can tag it on this post.
Sure.
But I'm so excited. Yeah, the vinyl, because like you, that one thing that you and I have in common is we're vinyl crazy. So I just thought, man, that'll be what a great concept. We'll do a light ale colored vinyl and a dark ale colored vinyl, and with coasters with my face on it, so you can slam your beer down on my face if you buy one of the vinyls, or both, because you get a special price if you buy both. You and I are the kind of people. All right, we got it. I have to have it on every color vinyl. We have to have the reissue and all that stuff. So, but yeah, I'm old school. I love the vinyl.
And you go and you buy the vinyl. You also get the autograph coaster, right?
Yeah, we'll autograph it. I'll be like Gene Simmons with the vault. I'll come deliver it to your house if you need me to.
By the way, you said that's one thing no. What'd you say? That's one thing that we have in common. We have a lot in common, actually.
Right, but one thing that with obsession wise
Right.
is vinyl and porn. But we didn't want to talk about that.
No, we're gonna keep that off to the side. It's funny you mentioned how your guy does Lemmy. I have an actual ID from Randy Savage, and I think people think it's fake, but it's actually real.
Right. Yeah.
It's
right.
so good.
Yeah. It's almost like you got to put a disclaimer at the beginning. No, this is really him. He did this before he died, and obviously, I would have loved to have the real Lemmy, who will live forever on in our hearts. But yeah, in lieu of having the real guy, Sean did a great job from Head Motor.
I've probably asked you this before, but how many times did you meet Lemmy?
Probably about, maybe, a dozen times, because he did that metal show 3 or 4 times, and I was very, not nervous around him, but just shy. I didn't want, because he's my idol. I didn't want him to not like me. I didn't care if he liked me, if he even knew my name, any of that stuff. I just didn't want my idol to not like me. I didn't want him to ever say to somebody, oh, that guy on the metal show is annoying, keep him away from me.
Yeah.
And then I think that's why he took a liking to me, because I didn't kind of try to force myself on him. And I was walking by his dressing room one day, and he's like, Don, come in here, sit down and have a drink. And I had my first Jack and Coke with Lemmy, and then I knew I could die after that.
Yeah, right. I'll never forget this story where I heard he landed, and we might have talked about this as well, where he landed in Europe somewhere. He told the driver to take him to the nearest liquor store. He bought a 2-liter of Coke and a bottle of Jack Daniels, dumped 3/4 of the liter of Coke out of the 2-liter, poured the Jack in there, and drank it on the way to the show.
That sounds about right. Yeah. I mean, that's, obviously so many bars, including the Rainbow in Los Angeles, where which was his home away from home when he wasn't on tour, have changed the name of their Jack and Coke to the Lemmy, which is very appropriate.
Yeah, Lemmy's one of those guys I never got a chance to meet. I always say there's 3 guys I never got a chance to meet that I'm kind of bummed out about. One of them was Dale Earnhardt. I never met him. And then Bob Probert, ironically enough, I never met Bob Probert, although I'm really good friends with his widow and his family.
Yeah, I know. I saw you post some stuff. You do a charity with those guys, which is great. But yeah, that's the other thing, is like you and I are both sports fans too. So there's sports guys that I've met over the years that it's funny, like with all the rock people that I've met, I've really never been starstruck, but a couple of sports guys have kind of thrown me for a loop, man. So I get that.
I was going to ask you who you've been starstruck by, because I can remember one of my earliest experience being starstruck was when I was by, and I don't even know if I ever met him, but Gordie Howe.
Well, I didn't know you were by, but what happened when you met Gordie Howe?
I was standing by him, and I'm just like, that's Gordie Howe right there. I mean, it's just kind of crazy,
Did you say anything?
I don't think I did. I have some autographed stuff from him at my house and that. But have you ever been starstruck where you just kind of didn't know what to say?
Well, yes. That's the other thing is like sometimes you're in the presence of somebody, but you can't find it in. Like you don't want to be a jerk
Right.
and crowbar your way into a conversation. But yeah, probably the two biggest ones, Joe Namath,
Mhm.
because I'm a Jets fan, unfortunately. But Joe's still the best quarterback we've had in the franchise history. But he couldn't have been cooler. And I was wearing a Jets jersey at the time that I met him, so he looked at me and said, "Hey, Jets fan," and I had him sign it, and he ended up being cool. And the other one was Tom Seaver, because I'm a Mets fan, and Tom Seaver, great pitcher from the Mets, Hall of Famer. I met him because I was doing a show for SNY, which is the Mets channel here on the East Coast, and I was in the box at the stadium, and Tom Seaver walks in,
Mm.
and I'm like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. And, and Eddie Trunk, was with me, and he's a big Mets fan. He's like, Tom Seaver's in here. I go, I know. What do we do? He goes, let's just turn around and say hi. And I said, hi, Mr. Seaver. Hey, do you mind if we get a picture with you? And he just looks at the two of us. He's like, absolutely not. And I went, and they say don't meet your idols. I go,
Right.
this is a perfect example of that. And then he just starts cracking up. He goes, of course, come on, let's get a picture. So it was cool.
That's great when people do that. Like, I met Chris Nyland over the weekend. Knuckles, one of the legendary hockey players, and John Scott. I don't know if you saw the picture with myself and John Scott, where he's like 6'8", and
Yes, I did.
I was holding his stick. I'm like, he was like the nicest guy, but all those tough guys are nice.
Yeah, you look like Billy Crystal in My Giant with George Mirasan in that picture.
Yeah, it's fun to meet some of these old hockey legends and stuff. But as far as rock guys go, or even music guys, I remember one of the first like major celebrities I ever met was Rick James.
Wow.
Yeah,
Did he say he was Rick James, bitch?
no, but this was like 1991, and he was from Buffalo, and that's where I grew up, and I was at a bar one day, and then my friend who was in a band said, "Hey, you want to meet Rick James?" I'm like, "Well, of course." And yeah, he was as cocky and as arrogant as you'd think he'd be, so it was perfect.
Yeah, there was a couple people that I really wanted to meet that, like I said, I couldn't. There's just no way to crowbar my way in. From being a kid, like I always loved the Monkees, and every time I'd go to see Alice Cooper, and I luckily get to go backstage and say hi to Coop. Mickey Dolenz would be hanging out from the
Yep.
Monkees, and Mickey was the coolest of all of them, right? Because he was with the Hollywood Vampires back in the '70s, the Drinking Club, Above the Rainbow, with Jim Morrison and Alice and Keith Moon and all those crazy people. But I just could never. There was never a good in to get in there. And then he played in New Jersey, and my buddy texts me. He's like, "Hey, I'm playing bass with Mickey Dolenz. You want to come to the show?" And I go, "Yes, I do, but I got to meet him." So he finally introduced me to him, which was cool. And then the other time was at an after party for that Zeppelin Celebration Day movie. Robert Plant was at the party. Actually, all the guys were, but Robert Plant was there. And again, I was with Eddie Trunk, and we're like, we got to meet Plant. And we look over, and he's talking to Stevie Nicks. And I'm like, there's no line to get in. There's no way to get ourselves in between those two. And then by the time we sort of like stopped geeking out, they had both left. So
Yeah, I remember I interviewed around 2009. It was actually opening. It was the first home game of the season for the Red Wings, and earlier in the day, I had to go interview them Crooked Vultures. So I've got Josh Homme and Dave Grohl sitting next to me, and on this side, John Paul Jones, and I'm like, the whole time I'm thinking, that's friggin' John Paul Jones from Led Zeppelin, and that was like kind of that was a little scary.
well, I got stuck in a situation at that same party with John Paul Jones because this old rocker from New York named Adam Baum, who actually puts out some very good music, but he's just a guy that just never quite made it over the hump.
Mhm.
And he was at the party, which was shocking enough. And he goes, "Hey Don, you want to meet John Paul Jones?" I go, "Yeah, sure." He goes, "No, he's a friend." I go, "Yeah, let me go meet your friend John Paul Jones." Next thing you know, there he is. And John Paul Jones like, oh, Adam, how are you, mate? And I'm like, oh my God, he really knows him. He introduces me to him, and then he walks away and leaves me with John Paul Jones. And it's like, no, I just want to say hi, you're an amazing musician. Nice to meet you, and leave. But now I'm standing there with him. But he was such a gentleman that he made me feel comfortable. And we had this nice conversation for about 10 minutes. And then Adam came back and saved me. But before I made too much of a fool of myself.
Yeah, I remember him after the interview. He was walking around this lobby of this hotel, really nice hotel down in Detroit, and people are milling about and walking here and there. And I'm sure that people that were walking by him were, had heard Led Zeppelin music probably their entire life and had no idea that he was in the band.
Yeah, because he's kind of the guy that doesn't really look like this guy from the 70s. Like Robert Plant still rocks the long curly blonde hair, and Jimmy Page still looks like Jimmy Page. So yeah, he's the guy that can kind of blend in with the crowd.
Yeah. And by the way, is your friend's name spelled Atom?
No, just Adam, Adam.
That's a lost chance right there, as far as I'm concerned.
Maybe that's why he didn't ever, make it to where he needed to be.
Yeah. Well, let's get back to your we could talk about music and stories the whole time, but let's get back to your record, or No Sleep Till McSorley's. How many shows did you do to put this together?
Like 2 years worth of shows, which
I'm talking about the actual recording. Was it like 2 shows or just one show?
Oh. Yeah, no, I recorded 2 years worth of shows.
Oh.
And no, can you imagine I had to go through 2 years worth of shows? No, yeah, 2 shows in one night.
Okay.
And this is my 5th stand-up CD. Like with my other ones, 96.5% of it is one show, because I like to keep the natural flow of things. The only things I edited from the second show was just stuff I forgot. So I prefer to do it that way. I don't like to record 4 shows or 6 shows, because then it starts to sound choppy. And I left mistakes in there. Like I left a line in there where there's a joke that, you tell I obviously thought was going to get a much bigger laugh. And then I say, well, hey, that's okay. I can put a bigger laugh in when we edit it.
That's right.
But I never did. I left the laugh that wasn't so good in there because it was funny.
Yeah, for post-production. Yeah. When I watch these comedy specials, like on Netflix or whatever the case is, I'm constantly catch myself looking at the crowd to see if there's different people sitting in the seats to see where they made the cuts.
Right, that's right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I've been in a couple of live videos over the years, but I did film this as well. And after we get the vinyl stuff going and all that, then I'll put the video of No Sleep Till McSorley's out as well. But the streaming and all that stuff, and I have CDs available too. But debuted at #1, man. So I appreciate everybody's support on this, and just going to be out touring for the rest of the summer. So come out and check out a show.
So what were the what have been some of the specials that you've seen lately that you really like, as far as from your fellow comedians, or are you one of these guys that doesn't really like to watch them just because you don't want to be influenced or whatever the case is?
Yeah, bingo.
Yeah.
I'll watch a couple minutes and then I'll get a flavor for it and go, okay, that's cool. But that's pretty standard for most comics. I'm a huge comedy fan. I'd like to watch more comedy, but yeah, generally I won't sit and watch a whole hour. That'd be like after your shift watching the next DJ do his shift.
And yeah, I don't want to do that. But like I was talking with somebody recently, it's like I watch comedy a little bit differently, and maybe you do too. Some people just want to be entertained, whatever. I'm kind of looking for the cleverness. I'm looking for the wordplay. I'm looking for how they transition through things, and maybe even sometimes how they work the crowd. And there's a little bit of crowd work in your special and your latest. I mean, do you watch it like that, or do you watch it as a fan, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I think I feel the same way as you are. Like one of the battles on this album, and of course, I talk about music and all the other stuff that's going on in the country. But I didn't want to be the old guy yelling, "Get off my lawn!" So I really wanted to take the time to make the material clever for everybody to laugh at it. Even if I'm making fun of you. I want you to laugh at it. But yes, is there something is there an underlying message to it? Yeah, of course there is. If you listen to it and read between the lines, you can sort of figure me out. But so I appreciate that in other comedians where, you know, they didn't preach to me, they didn't scold me, but they gave me a message, and they made me laugh at the same time.
Yeah, I think Chappelle is a lot like that. And plus, and since I know you so well, I have already like kind of figured you out. So maybe I listen to your stuff differently than somebody that doesn't really know you very well.
Yeah. But like I said, everybody gets it on this album, as you know. I mean, you know, I turn on the news, man, and within 5 minutes I'm enraged. So I just start writing this stuff down, and I'm lucky I got somewhere to go up and let some steam off, man, because otherwise I'd be paying a lot for therapy. And I get everything off my chest on this album.
Yeah. Now the last time I saw you live was in Buffalo when we did that Great White thing. Well, you did it. I just kind of tagged along and just drank Jack Daniels or something. When was this show recorded?
This was end of September 2023.
Okay, so just before I saw you.
Yeah, yeah, right. So but it's, you know, it's all the same stuff that's going on now, you know, just all the political correctness and all that stuff. But you know, the main themes here are, you know, don't put your faith in Hollywood, don't put your faith in politics, put your faith in rock and roll. And that's how the album, you know, winds up at the end, which I love the most, you know, because the music is the happy ending to this album.
Now, you're right. I won't sit and watch the DJ that's coming on after me, but I will listen to my interviews and watch some of my stuff just because you see it from a different angle or from the listener's perspective. Do you watch or listen to a lot of your stuff?
Um, you know, I do because, you know, especially, you know, when I've done like my podcast and when I've done interviews for other things, you know, I came up interviewing with two other guys on that metal show. So I learned how to interview people in a trio. Once I had to start doing it myself, I had to kind of really sit down and pick myself apart and go, wait, how do I do this alone? You know, so, you know, without having the safety net of two other guys. So, and now with this kind of technology, Zoom, and I'm glad we have it, but, you know, myself and Eddie Trunk and Jim Florentine are doing a show on YouTube called That Rocks. And while we developed a natural chemistry on that metal show, that was in a controlled setting. Now you have to try to connect through a bunch of boxes in the digital world. So it's really interesting. You know, it's a fun time to do all this stuff, but it's a challenge. And yeah, you got to sort of sit and try to like figure it all out.
Now, I was thinking to myself before I talked to you, what the world needs is another new podcast, and you're the one to deliver. So do you have another one coming up?
I do have another one coming up. You know, that Jamieson show put to rest after 235 episodes. But
that's over. I didn't know that. Okay.
yeah, that's over. There's a new one coming up, but it's too early to talk about that.
Okay, all right.
I'll come back another time. We'll talk. And yes, because God forbid we lose one podcast.
That's right. What else you got coming up this summer?
Just be out on the road, you know, touring and, you know, doing dates all over the country, man. You know, nothing formal, but if people follow me on my socials, I list all my gigs on there. And yeah, looking forward to having some fun.
What is the difference between like touring like with a comedy thing as opposed to touring with rock bands? Because you've done both of them. I mean, is there a huge difference or no?
Oh yeah, it's a completely different animal. You know, with a rock crowd, you got to come out swinging. You know, you really you know you. I have to be a direct support act as if I'm an opening band. You know, so I got to really bring that energy. Of course, I tailor all the material to the rock crowd. So you know, I'm not coming out and going. So anybody celebrating anything here tonight? Hey, who's married? Any birthdays? You know, I'm coming out talking about Black Sabbath and Alice Cooper and Ozzy and Zakk Wylde and Metallica and everything else. And in the club, I could take my time a little bit more. You know, when I get back from a rock tour and I start going back into the clubs, I have to kind of remind myself, Don, these are nice people. They've had a reasonable amount of drinks. They're seated. They want some comedy, and take a deep breath and take my time a little more. But honestly, man, I love doing both.
Yeah, I was going to say, because when you come back after doing the rock thing, you probably do find yourself speeding up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's always sort of like to readjust now back to the clubs. But even in the clubs, I tend to work, pretty aggressively.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Well, I'll tell you what, dude, can't wait to see you again back here in Detroit or somewhere. I appreciate our friendship and all of our funny text messages back and forth.
Absolutely. Likewise, man.
Yeah. Well, Don, good luck with everything. No sleep till McSorley's. We'll give this a good plug, and we'll see you next time you're here in the Motor City. And thanks for repping the D.
Absolutely. Always. Absolutely. There we go. Can't wait to come back, but now I got to go to the dentist. Bye.